I always come back, always come back, always come, always come back, 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 I always come back. Man, I hate this voice. Hello there, my fellow FNaF enjoyers. This is part 2 of 4 in my Five Nights at Freddy's retrospective. If you missed the first part, click the button in the upper right hand corner and watch that before watching this part. The link will also be in the description if your reflexes aren't that good. With that out of the way, let's talk about the worst fucking FNaF game of all time. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating a bit, but FNaF 3 was a pain in the ass at the bare minimum for multiple reasons. When Scott teased the game back in December of 2014... What? He did it twice?! What?! FNaF 3 was released 4 months after FNaF 2. How is this possible? So when the teasers for the game were being released, Scott implied that there was only one animatronic in the game, Springtrap. He neglected to further explain how there are hallucinogenic animatronics that cause a shit ton of damage and can even lead to certain death if you're not careful with the one animatronic that can kill you. Oh, and the cameras look absolutely horrible. I can't see a fucking thing! The game occurs 30 years after the original game and after the horrors of the pizzeria were uncovered. It was made clear the monetary benefits of making a horror attraction based on the events of FNaF. Allegedly. Half of this fucking story is based on pure speculation. The FNaF lore is like the biggest just trust me bro I've ever seen. I forgot to mention in the last video that the second game had minigames that further elaborated on the tangled wire system that is FNaF, and this game also has those minigames. This game, however, used a second set of minigames that were accessible by chance when getting a game over screen to provide different kinds of endings, which was a first for the series at the time. FNaF 2 had minigames, but you always encountered them at the end of every night. The FNaF 3 minigames that changed the endings only occurred by chance and were difficult to complete. 2 possible endings could be achieved. The bad ending occurs when you just beat the game without playing any of the minigames. At the end of the final night, you're greeted with a bad ending graphic that has the 4 animatronic heads, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, with one eye open and glowing. There's also a good ending that requires you to play and beat all the minigames. Once you do that and beat the actual game, the final graphic has the end on it with all the animatronic heads empty and not glowing, symbolizing the fact that the souls trapped and the funny little animals are free and no longer want to go on a murderous spree against Paul Blart Mall Cop. Springtrap, on the other hand, well, he always comes back, even from a burning building. The gameplay was god-awful, though. The cameras were far less visible than in any other games before and after it. Springtrap is easy to fend off, but every hallucination does so much to foil your flow that you're always in a constant state of disarray, which is not fun. Finally, the aesthetic is... green. FNaF 3. It's I actually like the game, like it's one of those guilty pleasures, but man, this has problems. Lots of them. It got a mixed reception when it was released and has since been very divisive among fans as to whether it's great or meh. There was a growing number of fans that thought this game wasn't that scary, however, and they wanted Scott to make a game that would knock the socks off people and give them the same skid marks that the first game provided. Would Scott rise to the challenge? Well...
Okay, so the first night is never usually that bad in any of the games, so I'll play...
Five Nights at Freddy's 4. I remember when this was supposed to be the end of FNaF. Man, that was some bullshit. The 4th installment of the FNaF series, also known as the scariest installment of the FNaF series, FNaF 4 was given so much hype because of 2 major reasons. The first being that this was supposed to be the end of FNaF, or at least that saga. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. The second reason was the way this game looked. I'm a grown man and even I feel uncomfortable glaring at these things. Just look at them. When the game dropped, it was like Halloween Eve. Everyone lined up to get a taste of just what the hell was in store for them. Boy, oh boy, that shit was something else. The game deviates from the typical occupational setting and instead opts for a setting based entirely on some random kid's room. Okay, he's not completely random. He's William Afton's younger son, allegedly, and he's experiencing major nightmares as a result of, who the hell knows? I lost my final brain cell with this game. The game is either set with the boy being in a coma or him being dead, which would kind of explain the nightmare animatronics, but there's also the idea that William was just torturing him, which isn't exactly infeasible because the game says it takes place 5 days before the Bite of 83. By the way, on day 775, and still no news on the Bite of 87, wonky timeline aside, the gameplay is extraordinarily discomforting, as your only accessible tool is your flashlight, and the only way to close your doors is to run up to them, which is pretty damn genius for the man who hates gay people. The animatronics look insanely good. This game has my favorite models in the entire series, simply because looking at these things, nightmare seems to be an understatement. FNaF 4 runs on the same metrics as every game before it, except now it discusses the death of the first child in this series, who happens to be William Afton's son, whose name is maybe Evan. It's all speculatory. And Evan is basically running through the cycle of never-ending animatronic as he tries to endure until the 5th day, which would be his final day alive. Kind of. Allegedly. The 6th and 7th nights indicate that Evan was in the hospital post-bite and is dying with both his brother, Michael, who kinda killed him, and father, William, who's probably losing his mind over this. It's blurry as to whether or not William was a bad boy when it came to creating animatronics during FNaF 4, but I don't believe that he was, because for some psychotic murderer, he really gave a shit about his younger son dying to one of the animatronics that he built. On top of that, the death of his daughter soon after because of Sister Location's circus baby might have been because William knew that Evan possessed Fredbear and wanted to know more about what happened, allegedly. All this to say that this game is probably pre-murderous William, which puts it in a very unique situation of trying to decode why he's treating his son like this in the first place, since he doesn't want Evan interacting with the potentially dangerous animatronics. Do you see why my final brain cell is fried? The release of FNaF 4 was met with very mixed reviews. Some people felt like this was a great way to bring back the horror element of the series, while others felt like the cheap ending of the game, we'll get to that in a bit, was reason enough to assume that Scott was winging it at this point. Okay, we've talked about everything important except for one particular thing. What was in that goddamn box? I'm almost certain that the community still doesn't fully know what's in the box. There's a theory that the box contains the crying child's corpse, the crying child being Evan. Scott himself, on the other hand, said that people wouldn't accept the box because it's the amalgamation of the pieces, presumably solving the series. Bullshit. After seeing that quote, I refuse to fucking believe that Scott knew what the fuck was in that box. I will beat every single FNaF game on PlayStation if Scott reveals what the hell was in that box, because he can't. The box is purely a metaphorical cliffhanger to keep fans interested. It was never brought up again and has since been left forgotten, just as it wanted to be. The crying child theory also doesn't make sense to me personally, because if it was the crying child in there, why wouldn't there be any mention of it post FNaF 4? Not even Ultimate Custom Night talks about this, and that game, I would argue, has the main antagonist Golden Freddy, the suit that houses both Evan and Cassidy, whom I refuse to talk about. Box is bullshit, I'm calling it. FNaF 4 caused a lot of ruckuses in the community, and since it was supposed to be the original end of the series, Scott took some time to himself. It wasn't long before it became obvious that this game really left more questions unanswered than answered, so after some deep deliberation, a new FNaF game was released in October 2016. That game was available in part 3 of this retrospective! If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It'll help out a lot. I also have a Patreon now, woohoo! It's completely free to join, and if you do, you'll get exclusive content that YouTube will either never see or will see later down the Bluestuff timeline. Go check it out and join, because it'll really be fun, I promise you. Anyway, see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.